And hello once again. Welcome to our fourth episode of To Your Point, our UCF sports and UCF adjacent topics roundtable discussion, where we bat around a few topics and have a little fun as well. And as I introduce our first topic, we will bring our panelists here in the quad box on one by one. So let's start off with our first topic. You know, you may have heard there was a bit of a kerfuffle regarding an email that was sent to season ticket holders regarding the transferring, reselling of tickets. And now that we've seen UCF's response to the backlash, how do you view the entire situation? We go first from the Orlando Sentinel, Matt Murschel, who covers all things UCF. Matt, good to talk to you again, buddy.
Yeah, good to talk to you too. I'm probably going to take an unpopular viewpoint on all this. I mean, I think when you look at the season ticket situation, you know, it's not unheard of that schools have done this in the past. You know, we know Michigan State's done it. You know, TCU, I think it was Alabama, has had this kind of policy in place where they try to make sure, you know, that those season tickets don't go on for sale. The concept is kind of like you don't necessarily own the tickets, but it's like you were subletting a seat, so to speak, you know, in a stadium. So they really kind of have the option of doing whatever they want to do with that. I think the way UCF handled it, the email could have been so much better. The email was so unclear, and it looked like at some point they were going to start punishing fans and, you know, taking away their tickets right away. And I don't think that was the intent at all. And I think the back, you know, coming off of it, you know, with Terry trying to, you know, go on, you know, the internet and talk to fans, you know, trying to calm them down, releasing an apology statement. You know, I think all this could have been handled so much better in the beginning of this and how they handled it. And of course, it looks really bad too, also coming off of 4-8 seasons. So I understand the policy, I understand what they're trying to do. They want to make sure the stadium is full of UCF fans enjoying the game. But when you're having a bad season and all this happens, and then you kind of release this, I just think it's a bad look overall. And I mean, and in a year or two, this will probably all die down.
It'll all be forgotten at some point.
Yeah.
Next up, we bring to you a frequent Sons of UCF contributor, Dali Drama. Dali, what's your take on it?
Gentlemen, thanks again for having me. I agree with everything Matt said. You know, across the country, stadiums are doing this. They want a home field advantage. You see them at the NFL level as well. Even the Tampa Bay Lightning, you can't be in a club section with an opposing team's gear. I absolutely agree with what they're trying to do. It's just how they do it. It's just the blocking and tackling of it, and the execution was a little bit subpar. And I think that's kind of a crux of this admin as of late. They're just very reactive with a lot of their communication efforts. So, you know, you'll have Terry, you know, jump on a podcast with the BYU AD for 30 minutes, but he couldn't take 3 minutes to kind of outlay this plan to the fans. So I think it was a little bit short-sighted. You know, they didn't wait to announce this until after people had already renewed their season tickets. You know, that was a little bit more communicated towards the end of last season. But again, I don't think everyone's going to listen to that coming off a 4-8 year. I think sometimes they take a little step forward too, and then like 3 steps back. The Scott Frost hire, some real solid juice, and people excited about that. Just the email on the culmination of a 3-day weekend for President's Day was a little bit awry. And I also think too, it's just like, you know, just Terry just on the back end explaining things or backpedaling, or, you know, it was only went out to an X amount of lists and query. I mean, you know, I work with data all the time. That's really easy to kind of just go through and just kind of sort through and just look at, you know, let me cross this with my donor base. So you have people that were, you know, season ticket holders for 15, 20 years that got a little miffed. And you look at this, you know, sports forums like the Dungeon of people getting rid of tickets that had them since the stadium opened. You don't want to see that. You know, this admin are just stewards for the program going forward. You know, people that are alumni fans and diehards are always going to be there. But like anything in the UCF Twitterverse, people get crazy. They go off for a few minutes. They tweet about something and it'll die down. But I think if you also want Orange County tourism tax dollars, you know, you're going to have people visiting where they're going to get those tickets from. So it's just a little bit different. And I also do think it's funny that they don't mind if you sell tickets, but they just want it on their form as well. So I'd like to see if UCF is getting a cut from the Ticketmaster fees that make any, you know, sporting event or concert exorbitant. So a bit of a kerfuffle, kind of a hallmark of this admin, you know, for the last few years. But hopefully they learn for the better. And, you know, Terry's definitely going to have to be on his P's and Q's as far as communicating with this fan base going forward.
And next up for his opinion on the topic, we bring you from the Black and Gold Banneret, the student of the game, Kyle Nash. Kyle?
Hey, great to be aboard. First of all, like, how am I a member of this panel? These are esteemed guys. What, you couldn't get Eric Lopez or Brandon Hellwig? You're stuck with me? I should apologize in advance.
No.
Joking aside, guys, I have to say a lot of great points here. To your point, Matt, see, I got it in there. Cue up the Leonardo DiCaprio. Oh, you got a bell. There we go. But to Matt's point, you mentioned other colleges are doing this. Heck, or the Knights aren't even the first team in Orlando to do this sort of thing. The Magic in their own share cheesed off fans doing it. And I can tell you, being there enough as I do, covering it for Fans First Sports Network, when you're in there with Knick fans cheering and chanting Jalen Brunson is the MVP, trust me, it has an effect to make sure visiting fans aren't out marching your own, especially coming off of the rough season that Matt mentioned earlier. And to your point, Dali, listen, I love you bringing the data angle in. I'm a data professional myself. If you are seeing the names of some of these major people who you know they have on a list somewhere with donors, who you probably know just by looking at a list, knowing they don't belong, and you still sent this out, that's a fundamental error. First, period, point blank, end of story. I know that there could be criticisms of the walk back and everything else, but I think it's been hit here very nicely. The biggest problem was simply the email itself. First of all, do you read all your emails? Heck, I know I don't. So with some of the detail and the way that these things were buried in there, the way that they were, and the very punitive nature, if that's the right way to do this here, the very punitive nature of the email itself. Listen, if you're going after ticket brokers, you do want to threaten them. I'm feeling that. But you can imagine some of the Twitter reaction, and it kind of caused an overreaction overall because of that tone. Certain other outlets out there are reading these things on the internet. I'm not going to be locked on particular examples that actually read these things on the air as if they were news, but the punchline's this. Doing that is how you got the bad reaction. I get walking about back. I actually respect seeing Terry Mohajir admitting kind of a kerfluffle, to reuse that word we don't get the opportunity to use much, Jeff. But I think Terry did the best he could with it. I'm willing to give Terry Mohajir a little bit of pass, considering that you just got Malzahn to move on without paying a $12 million buyout. We'll cut him a little slack on this ticket email situation. But I think the point's been made great by both you guys that this is a thing that could have been easily avoided.
Yeah, when I look at this, the first thing that comes to mind is, well, first of all, you're never going to completely eradicate ticket brokers. That's just not going to happen. That horse has left the barn, and it's not going back in. So you're not going to completely get rid of that. I understand wanting to you want your home fans in there. Now to that, I say, win some games, because, I almost didn't go to the Utah game, right? I was like, okay, the weather's going to be crappy. But I said, you know what? It's senior night. I'll go give RJ his props. And then, when it started raining in the second quarter, it's like, peace out. So it's like one of those. If you want to avoid having the visiting fans take over your stadium, go win 9 or 10, not 4. And that's really kind of what it boils down to.
Let's stick to bowl eligible 9 or 10. How about can we do that?
Well, I want to raise the bar a little bit.
I can tell you guys this, and I as first experiencing this, I worked up in South Bend for many, many years, and Notre Dame obviously is in the backyard. There was a game that Notre Dame played. They were having a bad year. They played against Nebraska, and that game, half the stadium was red because the fans had sold their tickets to Nebraska fans. And after that game, Notre Dame officials lost their minds because they said, we can never let this happen again, because on television, it looks really bad to have half our stadium be whatever, the opposing team is. So they went and did the same thing. They locked in on this idea of, you can't sell these tickets, at least sell them to us so we could sell them to Notre Dame fans rather than selling them to the opposing team's fan. And I think that's kind of the similar situation you see in the professional leagues. You don't want to see that happen as much. And I also look at, you talk about the BYU game, which I think was referenced in the story that I wrote, how there was about 5,000 BYU fans in that stadium. And you could tell it had a big BYU presence. We've seen it in basketball, Iowa State game against UCF men's basketball. There was a large group of Iowa State fans there. And we actually joked in the press area that we were wondering if they were going to storm the court, at Addition Financial Arena when they won the game. So, That's something that you're just trying to look to avoid. But it's a new day and age, right now. And I think schools are just trying to figure out a way, how do they get their handle on it? This obviously wasn't the way to do it.
Heck, Matt, listen, you're talking about South Bend that happening. This is the vacation capital of the world.
Yeah.
These other people throughout the country have extra incentive to come here. So for those that are shaking it off, oh, that's a lame excuse. Well, no, there's a force multiplier here in Orlando. Am I offhand, low-key blaming the mouse and King Kong? Yeah, a little bit. But, that's part of the appeal. We use it to get people in the building for recruiting coaches, players, staff, and otherwise. Of course, why would we be surprised that other fans want to come to our house so they can do this after they, well, lately apparently celebrate a win, but after they play UCF? Like that's the thing that's real. And we've heard even people, that's how they got tourism dollars towards some stuff, right? So there you go.
Yeah, you even had the BYU basketball game. They had a strong presence. They had an entire tailgate set up behind the baseball fields. I mean, UCF is totally fine with taking a fee for that for a few hours on there, and you're gonna have that. You have a budding fan base that's young. To be honest, we have a core fan base of about 20,000 people that are local in the Tri-County area that will go to games and that are diehards, and you're gonna have a little bit of a push from these visiting fans. But at the same time too, it's great to have those people here spend their money in Orange County and then send them home with a loss. It's fun seeing waving to away fans once you win. I think it just stings a little bit when you have homecoming 2 years ago and you're taking a restroom break and you're hearing Country Roads bellow in the middle of the fourth quarter. It's completely taken over a Burger U. It's just it's great for those local area businesses, but as a fan you're just like, come on, man.
Yeah. Well, Dali, you brought up the data thing too, which I find interesting because, there was no QC in this process because they just basically took a wide brush and went across, and nobody bothered to check the list. Nobody bothered to check the language of the email.
Yeah.
How does that happen at this level?
I mean, we've worked before in publishing, just as far as messaging, the data lists and building your audiences and those pockets that you're sending a message is a very diligent process. And it's not just how you communicate, on a poster or a media message. You have to have at every touch point. You need to make sure that there's some quality control to make sure that your messaging is on brand. And I don't know, just Terry, just sometimes he'll do the backtrack, or he'll do a big podcast thing or a slick highlight reel. It's just, just get a little bit more on the nitty gritty. He's done phenomenal for as far as budgetary concerns. And, we're transitioning. We're still not a full Big 12 share revenue member on that end. And it's a little bit crawl before you ball too. I think there's some humble pie for this fan base. I thought we were just going to, we got a little sweet taste of it, being the only bowl eligible team that first year. But, I think it's just going to be some growing pains that we're all going through at the moment. And this is just another step in the process.
If nothing else, I have proven tonight that I can agree with a large portion of things that Dali says. Nailed it on that one, my guy.
Oh, it's all harmony and unity. Let's
all love, baby.
We love that, man. All right, let's move to our next topic as we talk about the UCF college hoops season. Albeit a win yesterday against Utah, which cost their coach their job, apparently. The Knights, of course, are kind of crawling to the finish line here and limping. Is Johnny Dawkins on the hot seat? Dali, you take the first crack at this one.
No, Johnny Dawkins is not on the hot seat. What I'm worried about is who's in the driver's seat for this team and for what we're trying to do for Big 12 basketball. I think you've seen an appetite for hoops. I think we had that freshman jitters and excitement. We beat Kansas at home. We had some big wins on the road this year. We know how we beat Texas A&M and Texas Tech, which are both top 15 teams. And, Texas Tech is looking to be potentially a Final Four team. So we have moments of brilliance. And then we also have 7-game stretches like we've had before the Utah win on Sunday. I don't know if Johnny Dawkins is on the hot seat. He's definitely done more. The Banneret guys, one of my favorite articles from Eric Lopez. He's given us more than we've given him. But at the same time, it's a year-to-year thing. Every team is going to be different. You're not going to have guys that are going to stay for 2 or 3 years. So, you're just kind of taking what's the constant for Johnny all these years. And it's always that February fallout where he just hits a conference run and we just start petering out. And I just hate that we're on the cusp of a bubble. We had a loss against BYU. Let's have a bounce back against Cincinnati. They, do the NBA Jam highlight reel that night on us. It's just very disheartening when we've had these moments that we could take a next step, but we don't. You have Keyshawn Hall is leading scoring in the Big 12. But we were still ranked dead last as far as combined opponent rebounds, bottom 5 in assist to turnover ratio. And as far as luck rating, because that's important to some people, it's ranked 115th. So it's just kind of like, is it Johnny Dawkins or is it, putting together this group of guys? I just don't think that, at a certain point where you are on the cusp of maybe beating Kansas on the road, or you just need to protect an inbounds play against Houston to get a top 10 win at home, that someone just whispers in his ears and says, I just want to let you know, Johnny, you probably have a top 3 lower budget, bottom 3 low budget in this conference. It's just, what are you doing? What are you saying at the half? Sometimes these guys come out at the half and they're just absolutely flat. I don't see a kind of a fire grit, just kind of really a lot of solo ball, not a lot of communication. And it's just like, who's going to take over for the night? Keyshawn Hall has been phenomenal. But, it's a team game. Our depth has been, really shot this year. Jalen Sellers being hurt has been bad as well. I don't think Johnny Dawkins is on the hot seat. I think he has stewarded us with class into the Big 12. I think as a person, a great man and great ambassador for our program. But I want to start seeing maybe a coach that is at UCF that we can start talking about his time in college basketball as a coach and not just harp on his time at Duke.
All right, Kyle Nash, you're next.
Hey, listen, if you've seen Dali and I cross swords anywhere on Twitter, you and I both know that Johnny should not be on the hot seat is the correct answer. He is, though. Okay, we've seen too many times in college sports, period, where the inmates start to run the asylum a little bit. And if you believe any of the scuttlebutt and the whispers out there, the boosters aren't happy. But then again, when are they? Listen, a lot of the points are already nailed very well here, Dali. But to your point, if you remove Johnny Dawkins, there's so many other things to get obliterated. For one, the reason Jalen Sellers came back, and if you'd like him to come back possibly for injury red shirt, you remove Dawkins, you remove that. If you want Mustafa Chum to stay here, granted, he may still get bought because welcome to the world of NIL, which has been around here now for a bit. If you want him to stay, I don't think that achieves without Dawkins staying in the building. And this is the second year, by the way, we've had a player come out publicly. It was Keyshawn Hall this year, right? Last year it was Jalen Sellers who was a buyer in Johnny Dawkins. See, I got my dad joke in. But you have players pleading to keep Johnny in the building because they know he isn't the problem. I believe the players before I believe any fans that are frankly still getting used to being Big 12 basketball fans. I'm still getting used to covering Big 12 basketball. I'll be honest. And at the end of the day, guys, the fact that they were where they were before this 7-game slump without Jalen Sellers was an accomplishment. If we were in a time machine and saw this conversation happening, we would be like, either what happened to this team or how many drugs are we on talking about getting rid of Johnny. And compared to some of the other coaching brethren, hell, Malzahn's not even in the room anymore, so to speak, right? Some of the other coaching brethren who have also hit the same Big 12 bump and have competed a little less well, Johnny is among the more successful ones, it seems, so far.
All right, Matt Murschel, you can kind of break the tie here.
Well, I'm going to go in a totally opposite direction. I'm going to go in a different direction. I don't think Johnny's on the hot seat, but I wonder if Johnny's not going to be around for his own volition. I mean, I think you look at what's going on in the college athletic world. You look at coaches like, Jim Larinaga at Miami. We saw what happened with Tony Elliott, at Virginia. At what point does Johnny let's not forget he's about 61 years old. He doesn't look around and start thinking, I'm just not, this is a difficult way to do this now. Every year, 10 to 11 new players. You have to go out and recruit these guys in the transfer portal. You have to make sure you bring in the right guys. There's the right fit. How do you build chemistry? Did we evaluate our talent correctly? What did we end up doing to be able to win at the level we need to win? I think Johnny may be the one person to tell you this, maybe agree that the fact that they missed on some guys in this transfer class. I mean, I think they realized that there were some guys that maybe they should have gone after. They should have added some more size. They should have helped, build up a little bit on the rebounding factors, when it comes down low. They're horrible in the paint, defensively in the paint. I mean, they struggled at times with that. I think if they had some size, I think they could help with that. He went with a lot of guards. He went with a lot of guys that he felt like could play multiple positions. But I think the size factor really kind of hurt them. Rokas has never been a guy who's stepped up and done a lot. So I think that's the thing for me with Johnny. Is he on a hot seat? He's on a public opinion hot seat. I think there's a lot of people on social media who think Johnny should be out the door. I think Terry I've talked to Terry Mahajer about this before. He likes Johnny Dawkins a lot. He really likes the way he coaches players. He likes the way that he keeps the program clean. He likes the fact that there are not a lot of headlines going on about players running amok. He likes that factor. Now, I think as Dali pointed out, this is a program right now that's near the bottom of the Big 12 in NIL money. And considering how good the Big 12 is in basketball, you've got to put money in the resources. And UCF was really woefully behind even when Terry got here. He talks about putting money in the program, trying to help the program out. So I think the thing that people need to remember is after this year, he's got $0 buyout. I mean, so it's one of those situations that, and his second year after that, the is not a guaranteed year of his contract. Remember, he signed that 3-year contract extension. So there's no commitment by UCF. They could give they can give Johnny one more year and see what happens. But to me, I'm just wondering, does Johnny really want to go through this? Yes, he loves to coach. He told us that last night. Yes, he loves being a teacher and a mentor, and the players love him and all that. At some point, when does it get a little bit too much? And when do you start looking around thinking, I'm just burned out having to do this? There are times I've seen Johnny, the body language is just, he's a guy that's tired and beaten down. I get it. Seven loss, 7-game losing streak will do that. But there's times where I think he's just kind of seems like, it's been one of those long seasons.
I think any collegiate landscape, right now across the board is no country for old men, and you're seeing these guys just want to, it's a different game. The only thing that worries me about too is just I haven't seen Johnny Dawkins. At least if you went down swinging in that 7-game losing streak, you go down swinging, you just say, we gave it our effort. Ball bounced a couple different ways, but the Johnny Hallmark defense has just not been there this entire year, and it's kind of like, this was your thing. If we're going to play money ball, let's just play transition basketball, get quick baskets there, and just clamp down. And it's just everyone, it just seemed apathetic. You have guys walk up layups, back court to court or, coast to coast. So is his heart still in it? I think he still loves the game of basketball. I think there's some guys on our team that definitely still have some heart in it, with the Darius Johnson, a guy that's been here for 4 years. When's the next time you're going to see that at UCF for any major sport like that? To do it how he's done it, a game winner bucket, against Utah to break that streak. But it's just like, does he have that gusto? We were so excited. Adam Hood, that came in, was effectively, his offensive coordinator this year. And they were, slashing guard play, taking it to the paint, being more aggressive. Darius Johnson's game, just wasn't all on him. It opened up a little bit more, with Curry and Keyshawn Hall. So he definitely landed on some guys. I mean, to pull the Big 12 leading scorer out of the portal and to be as effective as he has been, maybe do we keep him onto him? I don't keep hold of him for this next year. I don't know. But I agree with you that I don't know if maybe Johnny is just like, this game is not what I kind of signed up for. And it's a little bit different. And also the juxtaposition of his career arc of a place at Stanford, which was so difficult to recruit people as far as academic standards. And, I love my alma mater, but then just like the complete opposite of that with the UCF, where your kind of ticket to the ball is that you're in the Big 12. So you could lose half your games and go 10-10 in conference and still make a push for the dance. If it's in there, maybe he can muster another year or so. But if we're going to let him go, I just want it to be with someone young, someone that could kind of match our fan base as far as the DNA, and let it go from there. I'm interested to seeing something on a build up, but I'm a little bit tired of seeing the February fallout from Johnny year after year.
Yeah. So, they basically, this is almost a little bit mirrors Gus a little bit. We traded defense for offense this year. It was kind of like a big swing by Johnny to do that. And God bless him. I love the man. You can't find a person with better character than him. But we have a track record. And granted, the Big 12 is different, but every February, we slide down the hill after making a nice climb up. And this year, losing the close games, come down to coaching, and a lot of that can be said that, the Houston game was, I kind of look back at that game as kind of a turning point to our season, because that was a game that they had won and they just let get away. So
I don't know. With a lot of close games, Jeff, I still feel like we're not mentioning enough of missing Jalen Sellers, the guy who was supposed to be a star. He makes the difference in close games like that, in my opinion. And not for nothing.
Yeah.
The history of Johnny recruiting bigs in a particular way where it kind of, I don't want to say an afterthought, but it's not the priority. I mean, think about it. It was 20. Let's see if I get the numbers right. 21. It was Chikenbake Jeong. Then it was Michael Durr. Then he freshly gets Diallo in the room, Ibrahim Diallo. That rotating element of new big men coming in is something that has been kind of consistent. But give him credit, though, in getting a Mustafa Chiom in the room. At least you got a young guy that you might be able to plant a seed with. I hear where you're going with the retirement thing, Matt. I've hinted it myself with conversations with my guys at the Banneret, but it would be really unfortunate if that happened just because those other seeds in other places have been planted. And, oh, by the way, yes, he happens to be awesome.
Yeah. I'll mention this too. I mean, you mentioned Jalen Sellers. That's something I think that bothers me a little bit too. And again, I like Johnny a lot. Johnny and I have had conversations. I mean, one of the better coaches I've dealt with, but the Jalen Sellers situation, not letting us know what's going on. I mean, the day-to-day, whenever we ask him, what's going on with Jalen, what's going on, I get it. He's trying to protect Jalen, whatever the injury is, whatever's going on. Something broad even would be better than that, just to let fans know, okay, what is going on in this situation? And let's not forget, it seems to be a thing where every game someone is out. And I know they've had a really bad flu bug that came through that team. They had guys who missed games. Jordan Ivy Curry's been out for a while here. He came on the bench. They've had Mustafa's missed a couple games here or there. They've had some other guys. I mean, it's one thing after another. And I think, this is one of those situations where I'm with you guys. I don't want to see Johnny go. If you want to see him go as much out on top as you possibly can. But I think, there's things with me. I think that this team, I wondered about it going in. They had a lot of good scorers. To me, it was like, who's going to be the guy when you're at the 5-minute mark in the second half and it's a 4-point game? Who's going to be the guy that steps up and takes the shot? When they need a bucket, when all of a sudden Utah goes on a 9-0 run, who makes the shot? You know what I mean? And it's Darius is that guy. Well, this year he's kind of deferred sometimes at times to give to someone else. They need someone to step up. And I know Keyshawn's done it at times. I know Darius has done it at times. But I think that's the thing to me I've noticed is that they need someone who's like, okay, it's go time. We need to go and do it. Now, Darius did it at the end of the Utah game. That's great. They need that sometimes in the middle of games. And I agree with what Dali said. There's just times where they come out flat in the second half. There were games where they come out, they look like they did something else at halftime. They didn't have a conversation. They just walked in, and all of a sudden you're like, what's going on here? Where'd this team go? You were in it in the first half. And so they need to do a better job of that. And they still have a chance. This is the other thing we're not even talking about. If they were to somehow pull together win 3 of the next 4 games, and then maybe win a game or 2 in the tournament, they've got maybe 8 or 9 games in the Big 12 wins. That's maybe enough to get them in the NCAA tournament based on how strong the Big 12 is, or at least get them in the NIT. So it's not like the season is lost at this point. They could still make a run. They just have to pull it together really quick.
If all that happens, we'll make fun of Jeff for making this topic.
Well, that's what drives the show. So that's how it works. All right. So we'll do our little halftime break of the program where we talk about a little something off sports and more fun. So I've asked our panelists to rank their top 5 candies. And Kyle, you get to go first. And if you could, rank them 5 down to 1.
Of course. And first of all, I'll try not to take offense, Jeff, that you're asking the diabetic guy about candies. Cool. But anyways, at number 5, I felt compelled to put something fruity on the list. Give me Starburst at number 5 for the fruity, juicy feeling. Baby Ruth, the basic chocolate peanut action there at number 4 for me does it there. By the way, not actually named after Babe Ruth, for those who are asking. Listen, You could call it basic if you want. I'm putting Reese's Peanut Butter Cups and Reese's Pieces together for my 3-spot. Listen, it's so famous that they make it at different shapes for every single solitary holiday, and I'm pretty sure no one here is bringing up candy corn for Halloween. Then number 2, listen, call me old if you want. They're properly referred to as caramel almond clusters, known as turtles. Listen, hey, and it's not just because I used to love Ninja Turtles as a kid. And at my top at number 1, the most underrated chocolate bar out there, the 100 grand chocolate bar for the complete candy experience. Those are my top 5, gentlemen.
Wow. Okay. That's an interesting list. I haven't seen a $100,000 bar in a long time.
Listen, I might be diabetic now, but I didn't get there by being skinny, Jeff Allen. Okay. I have experience on this matter.
Oh, all right, Matt. What's your 5?
Well, I'm going to preface this by saying I'm lactose intolerant, so I really can't do a lot of dairy. So when it comes to candy, my five is going to be a lot different than everyone else's. But my number 5 one is peanut butter cups. They do make plant-based peanut butter cups where I know Reese's has done that now, and so that's really good in my book. I like that a lot. Number 4 for me, Starburst jelly beans. That's just a go-to. You get some jelly beans when you're sitting around watching sports on the TV, something like that. Number 3 is peppermint patty, which is you can eat if they are dairy free. So those peppermint patties are really good. Number 2, this was mentioned and being mocked, but I like candy corn. Man, I'm one of those few people that likes the candy corn.
No.
Man, I will eat a bag of candy corn if it's coming on, because that's just who I am, man. I'm the kid who's getting the candy corn.
Oh, God. We're friends now, man, because we have problems otherwise, bro.
All right. And number one on my list is butterscotch. I'm one of those guys that eats butterscotch, not Werther's. Don't make this out like I'm an old man and carries Werther's in my pockets or anything when I'm at the game. But I do have butterscotch every so often, just to I like the sweetness of a butterscotch.
You were this close to getting a bell, and you came out with that candy corn trash, Murschel. Come on.
Kyle, I hate to break it to you. It's not in my top 5, but I'm a candy corn guy too.
Oh, come on.
Yes.
What are we doing next? Putting pineapple on pizza? Damn it.
Well, pizza came up in our last show, and that topic did come up. And
Of course you did. Yeah, listen.
All right. Dali, your top 5.
All right, so top 5. There's a little bit old man Caribbean in me. Ricola, the cough drops, number 5.
Oh.
I just have those all the time. You're always talking. Work for a living in media, so you're always talking, and always just have them in the jacket pocket or whatever. And then you just go to grandmother's house and just grab a handful from her. That's always around. Number 4, like Tic Tacs or Mentos, just like kind of Breathmans. I was a little kid who used to have the. I got into like the Pez dispensers, and I tried to see if I could put Tic Tacs inside of it. You can't do it, but I would still have that in there and just popping those all the time. And they're great. The green ones, the white ones as well, are play. Number 3, I got some good M&Ms, whatever just kind of catches your eye when you're cashing out. Just a quick little nibble. I like the peanut butter ones, which are solid. Number 2, the Haribo gummies. Anything, they're solid. They sometimes they have some varieties that you don't even realize they come out. Raid your nephew's Halloween candy, and just like, this is interesting. And then at number 1, I got the Reese's peanut butter cup. Man, you get those, the little crown. You put them in the fridge. You drop them in a little milkshake. It's a good little sweet treat. Nothing too crazy. And yeah, that's my top 5.
I was not prepared for medicinal properties being on the list.
Ricola.
Ricola. Yeah, we used to see that commercial in Spanish all the time.
Yeah. I won't be taking NyQuil as in my top 5. But,
Right.
All right. So my top 5 looks like this. At number 5, I'm going M&Ms. Always a great treat there. Number 4, I like Kit Kats. Those are really good.
Honorable mention for sure.
Yep. Number 3, Twix. Are you a left Twix or right Twix person? I love those commercials. 100%. Number 2, I go with Snickers. Yeah. And number 1, I'm also on the top list for Reese's peanut butter cups. You can pretty much get me to do anything if you offer that up. So
the only criticism I would offer is the Dan Orlovsky chicken level basic Snicker bar placement there, sir. I mean, it's nice, but number two, what are we doing here? Like,
well, well, first of all, I won't be a freak and eat them the way he does.
No, hey, listen, that's a separate conversation. I didn't take it that far. Like, listen, and by the way, I like that you got the lactose intolerant and the diabetic on this panel. That's great. But
we're just performing a public service for everybody.
Exactly.
Hey, I'm going to tell you guys, I mean, it's amazing now how much like they've improved candy with plant-based. Everything's plant-based now, and you can eat all this candy, and I don't have to worry about it. So it's really has made my life really well. They make M&Ms that are like that are not dairy free. So I can, hey, it's one of the things I craved when I couldn't get about 4 or 5 years ago. Now they make them. So I'm happy that the world has gotten that way.
I fully expected Matt to have some super niche Japanese candy that none of us have ever tried, that he says he found on some trip in his 20s or 30s that he has a stash of that you can't buy anymore.
I wish I did. I wish I had one of those. I think that would be great. Something that everyone would be like, what the heck is that?
Wouldn't you like to know?
The closest one to have that one, I guess, is me with the $100,000. Who out there? Anyway.
Yeah, but you know what though? We've brought good information to the people.
Public service, Jeff.
Yes, it's all about that. All right, getting back to our topics of the program, let's bring in topic number 3. Should the NCAA expand March Madness beyond 68 teams? Matt, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, whether they should or not, I mean, I think the tournament right now field is I like it at where it's at now at 68. Is it going to stay there? No. The Big Ten, the SEC, they're pushing. They want to get more of their teams in the tournament field, is just like they're trying to do with the college football playoffs. So they want to get all of them. So they want to get as many of their schools, into the NCAA tournament. So I think that it is going to expand. I think we'll get to. I think it'll be 76 is what they're talking about now. At some point, I think you may even get up into the 80s. When they finally get down to it, as long as a carrier like, CBS or TNT or whatever is willing to pay money, they want to get as many games in as possible. It's just like bowl season for ESPN. They want to have as many games as they can on all the time. And I listen, I mean, I'm a fan of it. I watch the tournament probably, like a lot of people, where you just sit in front of your TV and flip from game to game to game. And it's fun to do. But at some point it does get a little bit out of hand. And like bowl season, where we might get those teams that are, 5 and 6, or 5 and 7, or get teams that maybe weren't necessarily supposed to be there, getting there as well. So should they expand it? Probably not. But because this is college athletics and where we're going, I think they probably will eventually.
All right, Dali.
No, I don't think they should. I think there's something special about that sweet spot of 68. It extended those first 4 back in 2011, 1985 is when they really bolstered it out, to have the brackets in the 4 different regions. I think you're going to see it eventually happen. Like, the SEC and Big Ten want every team in their portfolio to be included as well. But I think you're getting down a slippery slope, because then it could get to a point that it says, hey, the top 4 seeds get a bye, or they have some playing games that are a little bit, undeserving, or they have it segregated that for the high major conferences can only have a playing game for higher seats. So I think it is the last. March Madness is the last collegiate sport that we have that David still has a chance on paper that he can kind of make it to the Final Four. We've seen that with a George Mason make it to the Final Four, and FAU. And I think if you start getting a little bit bigger, just to have the behemoths of the Big Ten, the Big 12, even the ACC, if they're all included with 9 or 10 or 12 or 15 or 16 teams, you're just going to see rematches again of what we had in the regular season. So it kind of waters down with, I used to love the Big East versus Big 12 or ACC versus SEC matchups that they've kind of moved away from. And I think if you keep it at 68, you have the uniformity of the first four all the way up to the final four. You're not getting too big. But I think there's some value for these tournaments that are popping up as well. They have the AAG basketball crown that they're going to do at the MGM Grand this year for a monetary figure. With NIL, what it is, I think it would be huge if you got 8 teams that were just on the bubble that are not really motivated for the NIT. I'm not really interested to see Kansas State go to Miami of Ohio for an NIT game on a Tuesday. I'll still bet on it, but I don't think there's a lot of juice for fans or people to get excited about it. But if you have it, all in Vegas, you could take a week out for spring break, and I think UCF fans will be more inclined. That could be even a possibility for us this year with the tie-ins that the Big 12 has. But I think 68 is a good sweet spot. Obviously, it's going to expand with what our bell cow of our conference is for the Big 12. I know Brett Yarmark is thinking about a TV contract with supplementary money with our basketball kind of achievements that we have and what we can bring to the table there. But we got to be a player in that, as far as actually winning games and making that. So I think it should stay as is, but I'm interested to see what they can kind of pull these Saudi Arabians when they just want to build a tournament or something, a rival to March Madness, to a supplement. I think the NIT, like the bowls, are dying. The CBI doesn't even happen anymore, I don't think, right? It's just kind of just keep it what it is. There's still some prestige to it. That Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that first weekend of games, there's something magical about that. So I wouldn't want to take away from that.
Kyle?
The only place where David could still battle Goliath. Are you telling me SMU and Indiana never had a chance in the playoff, Dali? How dare you? No, listen, I think there's a lot of what you're saying there. I won't repeat your points, but I will add this to your point, fellas. See, I did it again. It's the theme. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Jeff.
You got dueling bells here.
Rather than, and get it, I get Brent Yormark wanting it. I get UCF fans wanting it. The more opportunity to get your guys in is something to be excited for as a fan and or commissioner of a conference. The incentive there is not lost on me. However, and by the way, how cool has it been to see Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese uplift women's basketball? Hey, I don't know. Maybe get your tournament to outperform the women's tournament again before you talk about expanding, because right now, the group that's not supposed to be beating you currently is in viewership, allegedly, right? So until you fix that, maybe, I don't know, don't expand it yet and further dilute a product which has been proven to be diluted. And listen, it's been said by many other people just as smart, if not smarter than I, in about the fact that one and done has killed some of that viewership and the relatability. I know some shots have been fired at my beloved Bulls, but at least at the end of the day, I could tell a story about a player, whether it's from Jackson State or wherever else where I'm covering the Cure Bowl, that can make someone care about it, whereas the opposite is true for team number 68, or I don't know, 165 by the time the capitalism powers that be get their hands on it, right? At the end of the day, no one cares about those lower pieces, especially playing games. They want to see the upset. They want to see the Cinderella, and then it starts falling off for the championship. Ouch. So yeah, fix what you got before you start talking about making it bigger. That's all I would add to that.
March Madness is my favorite sporting event of the year. I think the Thursday and Friday of the tournament should be national holidays. I take those days off of work. I watch from noon to midnight and just live it religiously. It's such a great sport in that regard. I almost want to see them go back to 64 because I really think the first four is the way they do it. Having 11 and 12 seeds have to play a play-in game, to me, just isn't right. They should be, and granted, they want some teams in there that have a little bit of name, but if you're going to have play-ins, it should be all 16 seeds, not mixing in 12s and 11s. So I think, credit to Dayton. They've kind of made that their own little special bubble in the tournament, and it's good for their local tourism. I just get really, kerfuffled. Found a way to get it in.
Hit the bell.
Gotta get it again.
So, by the way, hey, Jeff, when we make it to Capitol Hill, I'll throw my support behind National Holiday for that if you give me the Monday after the Super Bowl. How about that?
Oh, you totally in for that. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. The continued talk of expansion, I like what Dali said. I don't want this to, be basically NIT teams playing at in the first part of the tournament. It's a perfect product the way it is, and let's just not screw it up. It's, to me, it's, there's still money to be made, and they can make improvements with the field they have, with the 68. I would just hate, see the root of all evil, money, ruin such a spectacular event that, is, as to me, is the best one.
And I'll say this, having covered, when the NCAA tournament is here in Orlando, I mean, that's a great event. I mean, that's one of my favorite events to cover because, it's game after game after game. And it's just, I mean, you're like in heaven. I mean, I grew up in basketball country in Indiana. So to me, I love it. I love doing that. So, I can't imagine what, if you start diluting it, it gets down to the point where you're got games that really don't necessarily matter as much, as some of those ones. Those Cinderella games are ones, that's what we talk about, right? I mean, those are the games that we remember. Those are the teams that we can talk about year in and year out. So I just hate to see it get to the point. I agree with all you guys that it gets to the point so diluted that we're just, the product is nowhere near as clean and fun as it used to be.
I mean, how great was it when UMBC became the first 16 seed to knock off a number one when they beat Virginia? I mean, I waited a lifetime for that.
Yeah, Fairleigh Dickinson. I was at that game against Virginia to knock them out.
Yeah. I mean, that was great. And you get the players, you get I mean, there's so much emotion. You get so much stuff that you don't get, necessarily during the regular season. And it's fun. I mean, I enjoy it. So, I mean, I'm hoping it doesn't, but again, when you talk about it's when it comes to college athletics, money seems to drive the bus.
Yeah. And Matt, and I'm sure you've seen this in all the games you cover. How remarkable is it when you watch a lower seeded team playing for the upset and you see the crowds coming in for the later game, start to support that team.
Yes.
It doesn't get any better than
no, and all of a sudden you got fans who are coming. You're like, whoa, what the heck? And all of a sudden you got fans wearing different color cheering for that team, and it's like, I mean, it's incredible. And then it's also where coaches and players get to kind of really mingle a little bit, and guys can talk about maybe they've seen a guy that you're not used to seeing, and it's incredible. And like I said, I've been a big fan of it since I was a kid, and to see it to where it is now, I'd like to keep it in that kind of, a prism of nostalgia, but we'll see what happens.
All right. Of course, let's now talk some ball and stick sports as UCF's baseball and softball seasons have gotten underway. Wanted to get your thoughts and prospects on what you think those two programs will do this year. Dali?
I think the diamond ball sports have been solid for us in the Big 12. I think, to have Wallace back in Orlando, an Orlando guy that is one of our own, kind of at the head of the program, has been great. They were looking to be 10th preseason last year, and they made the tournament and finished 14 and 15 in the Big 12. They went to the Tallahassee Regional. For the first go at it, I thought they did pretty well. And this year we got some good pitching. We got Dom Sagliano was back. Dominic Castellano with the pitching staff as a reliever. The Doms are back at it. I think we slipped up against Bryan on Sunday, but we still won the series. It's just kind of the vibes. It's kind of like forget what that infomercial was, set it and forget it, and you just kind of leave. I just like Richard Wallace. I just like what he is doing. I like his vibes. He feels like UCF, and you could just kind of see it in his DNA. I think if you have places like Coastal Carolina that can win a national championship, why not here at UCF? If I had resources to just pick a team and you could easily do it with baseball in, a few years, as far as NIL. And I think it's inherent to the region as well. Central Florida is baseball, the country spring trains down here. So I think they're solid. I mean, you got pitchers with Lex is still crushing. We got a power hitter with Sundin, which is always a fan favorite. The guys look like they're having fun, and you could just see a good energy. So I'm excited about that. And then you got Coach Bear. She's doing her thing. She's on the cusp of maybe going to her 5th postseason. She's been here, I think it's been 7 years at UCF. The Plex is always rocking. She has a good brand. It's been cool to kind of see my niece or my sisters want to go to games outside of just football games and check out a softball game. They got a brutal schedule. I mean, you got Oklahoma in the conference, or they have them on the schedule. Oklahoma State as well, and Florida. So we kind of took our licks. I think they're 12-6 with a tie. I wish it would kind of just left that Ohio State game in Clearwater up to nebulous. Like maybe we would have won if we didn't, but I know they lost on Saturday. But I'm pleased with them. They have the resources. We've lost some pitching with Willis that graduated, but beyond that, I think that those are two sports that have performed on pace and have been entertaining. They're not getting embarrassed on the playing fields, and I think they should definitely get some more support. I think it's kind of cool to see the. You forget that we're kind of a young school, and you're seeing people late 30s, early 40s with 5 or 6 year old kids running around at the baseball games. So it's a good product that they're putting together, and I'm excited to see what we can do there. And I think Wallace is in a couple years is going to get some people that are really interested in backing him financially to kind of get the players that he needs. But if that's a guy that I want to play Moneyball with, I think he is our DNA and someone that's passionate about our program. So I'm excited to see what they do.
Kyle?
The only thing funnier maybe than asking me as a diabetic to talk candy is asking me to talk stickball, but here we are. Listen, at the end of the day, though, guys, I think a lot of good points were made by Dali talking baseball and all that stuff. You mentioned the why not us concept. I remember the only reason I ever heard of Cal State Fullerton is I saw them in the College World Series a bunch of times when my dad was watching it. It's a crazy element of just how you can basically come out of anywhere and still make the tournament. Now, granted, something that would help UCF a lot on the diamond for baseball is if they could come out and get a win against Florida coming up, a preseason ranked team. But beating up on Siena opening the year is nice and all. I want to see what they do before I write it off. But yeah, they could definitely be a tournament team. I wouldn't question that at all. And listen, if I didn't have something positive about softball here on this show, I'm sure my good friend Eric Lopez would take me in an alley and punish me severely with a baseball bat. No, but listen, seeing softball stack wins lately, 5 of the past 6 with W's. Yeah, the schedule's been tough. They nearly beat Liberty as a ranked team there too. I thought that element was impressive. They'd have beaten a ranked team this season as well. Obviously, Coach Bear has been doing the thing. We talk about coaches being successful, making the jump to the conference. I can make an argument, certainly, that Coach Bear might be the most successful UCF coach to make that transition on campus. Both sports, certainly incredibly optimistic.
Matt?
Yeah, I think, both my esteemed colleagues have talked about, really on all the high points. I think for Rich Wallace, I think in year 2 of the Big 12, and we talked to him when he was during the preseason, and he mentioned this whole idea of finding out what he really needed to have success. They needed more depth. They needed better pitching. They needed more out of their bullpen. I think he was able to address a lot of that in the offseason. And so I think this team right now, baseball team, has a lot of potential. And you saw so far early on what they've been able to do. And I think I agree. I think Rich is a guy that's going to really kind of take this program to the next level. I think he can really establish something there, especially if they can get back to the NCAAs, if they can continue to have strong showings in the Big 12 tournament, those kind of situations. I think that's only going to help build the program up. I think it's going to put it on a spot where it's going to be probably one of Terry Mahadra's best coaching hires, if you think about it, when you look at what he's been able to do, especially if they can continue to do that. And I think softball is the same way. Coach Bear told us, she always, puts these tough schedules out there. She wants to challenge her team. And I think they've had that challenge early on. Now, hopefully that'll carry on into the, the Big 12 and able to kind of survive some of these, tough road trips and things like that. So, and if they could get in the NCAA tournament, when both those teams are in the tournament, there's so much excitement, so much buzz. When we get people who aren't necessarily baseball or softball fans who really start following it then, because then they really want to see what's going on. And I've got a soft spot in my heart for softball. My niece played college softball for many years. And so I enjoy the sport. I think it's something that is really fun to watch. And there's nothing like going out on a Friday night or a Saturday night and catching a softball game. And heck, nothing beats a good hot dog at a baseball game. So I'm going to tell you right now, both those sports do it for me.
Yeah, it's great stuff. And you go now with baseball, where I'll start there is now you have to basically throw out the nearly annual beatdown of Siena, where they score 50, 60 runs in the weekend series, because, that's just going to be what it is. Siena gets a nice, opportunity to play in the sunshine and warmth versus the cold Northeast. But I love what Rich Wallace is doing in the program. I love the fact it's a UCF guy at the helm, and the fact that they made noise last year, and that was wonderful to see. And I think we'll continue to see more better things out of the baseball program as we continue on. As far as softball, I thought that program was the very best one to have the opportunity to have success early in the Big 12. Coach Bear has definitely set that up such well. I love the tough scheduling. Softball has become a big time viewing sport for me. So I have 3 TVs in the cave, and sometimes I'll have 2 softball games on during the course of that because it is such an entertaining game to watch. And I love the fact that the energy that those gals bring. It could be losing 10-2, and you still hear the team that's losing chanting and cheering. So that's a great aspect there. And again, I think what Coach Bear is doing there, especially with the preseason, the early season scheduling, I should say, is just remarkable. Mm-hmm. They definitely have to practice hard. And then, when they get into the Big 12 schedule, I don't think they're intimidated. So at that point, they feel like they can play with anybody. So great job there. All right. The last segment of our show is what we call nightcaps. As we pour one out here, each panelist gets 1 to 2 minutes to deliver a monologue of any topic of their choosing. And Kyle Nash, you get the first cap.
Listen, we talked about a lot of things. We haven't touched on football yet, and I'm going to do it here now. Listen, at the end of the day, what is there to get excited about exactly? We haven't seen anybody play. We've seen a lot of, booms and bings out there where you're cleaning up and getting a lot of beef. Okay, I'm excited about that as a former offensive lineman. But listen, Scott Frost is back. He brought Sean Beckton back. Mackenzie Milton's in the building. And a sneaky good hire in Sean Clark as a former head coach from Appalachian State, now the O-line coach. By the way, happens to be good friends with Herb Henn, throwing that out there. All those are cool stuff. You can even look at guys on the defensive side, Kmart staying in there with the defensive tackles. I could go on and on. But, folks, the one that you need to keep your eye on the most, the 26-year coaching veteran, Pete Almar at special teams. Matt, I know you know what I'm talking about. Yes. When this guy is a fireball, translates the art of special teams into real estate acquisition. I'm trying to take as much land as possible and make sure you can't stop me. It's a beautiful thing to behold. Okay, great, Kyle. They have a dedicated special teams coach. Who cares? Well, you know what? Who else is developing when they're not starting? Special teams players, right? Guys like Xavier Townsend who are making an actual impact down the stretch until they were transferred. But the punchline is this: when you have guys who are more engaged and a coach dedicated to do it, maybe that's how you keep a guy who is talented athletically and just hasn't got the cracks in yet because he's not a veteran. Again, I once more cite Townsend as an example, but who's another head coach who might be the most previous head coach to have any real success in special teams? Oh, yes, it was Scott Frost with both Adrian Killens and the late Otis Anderson. Between his presence, understanding what guys need to look like with speed to do that sort of thing, and this gentleman in here in place to coach them and actually develop guys who are in the process of growing, this key to keeping freshmen instead of letting them get bought, he's going to be a huge part of all that. And hey, by the way, maybe it'll be nice to not give up 2 touchdowns and lose a game you should have won against the team that eventually won the conference. Yes, I'm still bitter about Arizona State. Deal with it. But that being said, having a dedicated coach like Pete Almar for special teams, just like Mac Loudermilk was calling for on Twitter, was a great move, and he found a guy I think can do the job.
Yeah, we definitely know how special teams let us down last year. That's for sure. Okay, Matt, what is your nightcap?
All right, I'm going to real quick, Kyle. I'm actually going to write something about Pete this week, so that's how much he impressed me. So I'm going to go with college football as well, but I'm going to take a little broader view. Listen, Texas and USC announced this week that they are not going to be hosting a spring game this spring. Again, they're joining a long list of schools now are coming out and saying we're choosing to go away from the traditional idea of having a spring game because we're worried about losing our players to the transfer portal. Does this sound familiar to UCF fans? Because we know that talking to Terry Mahaja that the idea is that UCF probably won't host a spring game as well. Probably doing maybe something else like a scrimmage or some sort of, practice, letting fans watch a practice or something like they're doing that. And listen, I get it. I had fans reach out to me and screaming and yelling, "We want a spring game. We want a spring game." To me, a spring game is practice. Let's bring back Allen Iverson. Practice. This is what we're talking about. That's what a spring game is.
That reference. Spring
game is just practice. And, normally, and we've seen in the past, you get like half of a game. And then, when in the past for UCF, it's been what? It's been NIL stuff. It's been some, special teams, things like that. They do some sort of, way to kind of get the fans involved. And I get fans want to be a part of it and they want to get a chance to see their teams. But you're not going to see these players anymore. That has changed. The transfer portal and tampering, all that has caused this to change. And until they get rid of the April transfer portal window, I just don't think schools are doing that. I've talked to several other coaches about the idea of why they would want to or not want to have a spring game. And a lot of them mentioned the fact that, listen, they would prefer to go to the NFL model. And I think that's what we're going to see happen. We're going to see colleges go to an NFL-style calendar in the spring where instead of having camp, it's going to be like OTAs. They're going to allow their players to go out and practice. They're going to allow them to do some things, run through some drills and things like that. But they're not going to go through the traditional spring camp. They're going to go what the NFL model is. That's the way college football is kind of trending as it is right now, based on everything we've seen, financially and how things are kind of the model that's going with paying players and things like that. So that's what I think the direction we're going to see is going the NFL model. So yes, I get it. I know why everyone's upset. They want to see their spring game. They want to see someone have some fun, but it's not going to happen. And in fact, it's probably gone the way of Jim Morris' career. So there you go. That's my rant.
As a note, Matt, you mentioned the NFL model. We can confirm one of those coaches preferring that our own, Scott Frost.
Yes. OTAs are going to be, and Mike Norvell, I mentioned that Florida State coach. I talked to him a couple of weeks ago and mentioned it, and he said, yeah, he thinks that's what's going to happen. You're going to see a lot more of these teams. They'd want to push for that and try to get rid of like an actual spring practice and try to do some model like that.
Yeah, well, for me, a spring game is probably one of the most least interesting things to watch, in my opinion. So there you go. All right, nightcap number 3, we go to Dali.
So whether it could be the spring game or an errant email from UCF Athletics or just being called Central Florida, UCF does not stand for the University of Central Florida. It stands for University of Complaining Fans. And I am guilty of that. Some of us have all had our moments on that. And that's what happens when you haven't won a bowl game in 3 years, when you have a February fall off in basketball, haven't made the tournament since Johnny Dawkins had his son on the roster and a missed tip-in. We have a lot of growing pains going on right now as a fan base, and that comes with not winning. And it's been a little bit about a rough patch. Going to football games and seeing a sea of gold for West Virginia on homecoming, or BYU, or losing a game against Utah, which was also putrid as well. You see that at Iowa State with fans coming by. It's fun to drink with them, but it sucks to lose to them. And it was also just kind of seeing, we just end up going to Tallahassee for a regional, and we just can't get over the hump. But brighter days are ahead. And I think it's just, you got to take the lumps, If anyone's a student here in the 90s or early 2000s, about the UCF moniker. If this went that way, and everyone has their war story of, you're not a real fan, and telling kids from 17 or 18, you really didn't have it as bad as we did. But at the end of the day, winning cures all. And I think that's why we're hiring a Scott Frost. Rich Rodriguez is also back at West Virginia. He had a conference this week. He had a really good quote. He was asking about the nostalgia factor, and he goes, in his little twang, I'm not hired here for nostalgia, what I did in 03 and 04. I'm hired here to win. And that's absolutely true. That's what we need to do across the board. We may have made it to the Big 12, but we can't get complacent. Our friends down west, Southwest, they got complacent in the Big East, and look where they're at now. You're going to be 2031 is going to be a huge shakeup again for college football and sports in general, in the collegiate landscape. And we got to be on our P's and Q's and got to win, and we got to be sexy again. And like our late friend James Reed, cost seg advisor on Twitter, would always post, I don't care, UCF, just win.
Just win, baby. That's for sure. All right, so my nightcap, I'm going to talk about the rise and fall and the rise again of one Rick Pitino. Now, if you've seen the Netflix series Red Storm Rising, you've gotten a great insight into how he coaches and how he develops his players. Now, Rick Pitino definitely has a sordid past. Bad scenes from an Italian restaurant. You can go back to the many scandals he had during his time. He went overseas, coached for 3 years, and then came back to begin his redemption tour at Iona. I would like to have seen him finish his career at Iona because that would have been just kind of a nice, easy way to go out. But like most of these guys who are power brokers and coaching college basketball, they want the next big thing. And St. John's came open. He's a New York kind of guy, and everything is lining up. He's got them about to win their first Big East regular season title in, 30-something years. And again, the Red Storm Rising, in the clip that's getting the most attention is his halftime locker room speech. Sometimes I kind of wish Johnny Dawkins would just lose his just like that. That would be something that I would relish to see. But it is crazy. But you know what? In sports, redemption stories are such a thing. And Rick Pitino is definitely gotten back to the promised land. And St. John's could definitely be a noisemaker come March Madness time. And that's going to wrap things up for this edition of To Your Point. For Matt, Dali, and Kyle, I'm Jeff Allen. Thanks for joining us.